Ben, a lot of scholars are saying in Time Magazine, Newsweek, some of the books that our college textbooks are putting out, that there's a lack of evidence concerning Jesus. Is that true?
Well, when you're looking at figures that are as far back as 2,000 years ago, if you were to compare Jesus to, say, Julius Caesar or some other first century figure, the truth of the matter is we have far more evidence about Jesus than any other comparable figure in antiquity. Now, of course, most of the evidence is Christian evidence, but we have a lot of different kinds of Christian evidence about Jesus. But it's also true that he's mentioned by a Jewish historian, he's mentioned by a Roman historian. So it's not true that there's a paucity of evidence about Jesus. It's a question of how we weigh that evidence and sift that evidence and what credence we give to it.
Is there a difference between Christian evidence and secular evidence?
Well, surely there is. Christian evidence is the evidence given by convinced believers, and they come at that evidence in a different way than a secular person would. They're like lawyers arguing a case rather than newspaper reporters pretending to be neutral. None of the gospel writers or the New Testament writers pretend to be neutral. The only question is whether their interpretation of Jesus is warranted by the facts or not.
How does archaeology help us in learning about the historical Jesus?
Well, a text without a context is a pretext for whatever you want that text to mean. I mean, it becomes a soundbite without a setting. And so the truth of the matter is that without archaeology or the study of social history or that sort of stuff, we don't have a proper context. We only have a literary context in which this or that saying of Jesus is set. We need the historical and social setting as a sort of check and balance against misrepresentation of what the parameters of possible meaning could be about a saying of Jesus, or what a particular thing that he did could possibly have signified in that kind of culture and time.
What archaeological finds of, say, the last 100 years have confirmed the historical text of the New Testament?
Well, most of the kinds of materials that we would call direct confirmations, there's not an abundant amount of material like that. I mean, we have found a Pontius Pilate inscription. We have an ossuary with the name of the family of Caiaphas written on it. I mean, it's that kind of very direct evidence of correspondence with some person or thing mentioned in the New Testament is reasonably rare, but what we do have is we have an abundance of archaeological evidence that comports with the evidence we have in the New Testament, doesn't disconfirm it, and that's very important in a general way.
What kind of evidence should we expect to find about the historical Jesus?
Well, I think when we're talking about the historical Jesus himself, that the kind of evidence that we would expect to find would be testimonies, personal witnesses about Jesus, reflections on him by those who were his followers, whether the first or second or third generation of his followers. Those are the kind of things we would expect to find and do find.